The highly transmissible Omicron variant of COVID-19 continues to test China's COVID-0 strategy. Beijing and Shanghai have been hit particularly hard. Millions of Shanghai residents have been under strict lockdown for more than a month now due to outbreaks. Some residential compounds there have been fenced off, and in Beijing, well, massive testing campaigns are being used to control the spread of the virus. Restaurants in the city are also closed to in-person dining until Wednesday. Well, for more, let's bring in Patrick Falk. He's been tracking the COVID-19 situation in China and joins us right now in Beijing to provide an update. So, Patrick, always good to have you on the program. Let's begin in Beijing, where you are. What's the latest there?
Well, Michael, we just heard literally a moment ago of a new development. You talked about the mass testing just now. Authorities here have called for another 3 rounds of mass testing in Chaoyang district. This is the district that's been most heavily hit in the capital in the next 3 days. Remember, we just had 3 rounds of mass testing last week, and a lot of people might have been hoping that things might have eased up for what is a nearly week-long May Day holiday here in China, but instead they're getting exactly the opposite. As you mentioned, in-restaurant dining has been banned, entertainment venues have been closed, more testing. And as a matter of fact, to go into just about any public venue or office building right now, you need to show a negative test taken within the last 48 hours. And there is this sense that authorities are absolutely determined not just to stop the spread of the virus, but also to show that the zero COVID strategy works. And people here, as you can imagine, are nervous about the situation, nervous about going into a Shanghai-style lockdown. But the reality is there are already several compounds, office buildings, even a university that have been placed under lockdown already. And so, in a sense, there are a number of people in the capital that are already getting a taste of what people in Shanghai have had to endure to some extent over the last month or so.
Well, you mentioned Shanghai and use that as an example that people in Beijing are bearing in mind at this moment. But there seems to be some good news out of Shanghai as well, though.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. Seems to be a bit of light at the end of the tunnel for residents of Shanghai. Officials actually had a press briefing yesterday, and they were particularly upbeat and, as a matter of fact, said that the situation was effectively under control. Today was the second day in a row there were 0 cases at the community level. That means that all the infections were within quarantine zones. And as a matter of fact, the total case numbers have just about halved from this time a month ago. On top of that, they've declared that 6 districts of Shanghai's 16 are essentially COVID-free now. That means they've gone 3 days without any cases at all. So it does look as though things are easing up. Public transport has begun running in some of those districts now as well. Although one thing we are hearing, we talked just yesterday, as a matter of fact, about how nearly half the population were allowed out of their homes now, some of them allowed out of their compounds. But we're also hearing that there are a lot of residential compounds taking it upon themselves to keep residents indoors, even though they're actually allowed to go outside right now, because they're obviously still nervous about the situation, still nervous about there being further outbreaks. So once again, we're seeing officials kind of go beyond what they need to do right now, taking a very tough approach, and that's obviously difficult for residents who are still stuck indoors.
Patrick, thank you for the update. Really appreciate it. Patrick Falk in Beijing.